All right, everyone. So today I have a very special guest with me here in studio. I have Silvia with me because next week on Tuesday it is Translation Day on the 30th of September. And because I figured most of us maybe don't know what that is, Silvia is with me here today to tell us a little bit more about what translation is and why we celebrate this day. So, Silvia, if you would just start by presenting yourself, tell us who you are, what languages do you speak, all of that stuff.
Yeah, of course. So first of all, hi everyone, and thank you, Emily, for having me here today. My name is Silvia. I'm 24 years old, and I come from southern Italy. So, as you imagine, my native language is Italian, but I also speak English, Chinese, and a little bit of French.
Perfect. And then if you would maybe just start by telling us what Translation Day is and why we celebrate it.
Yeah. So International Translation Day, as you said, is celebrated on next Tuesday. So it's actually pretty close, and it's celebrated on the 30th of September because the UN decided to celebrate translators and honor at the same time Saint Jerome, who is the patron saint of translators because he famously translated the Bible into Latin. And the process to get it established as an international date and event started in the early 90s, but it has actually been an official event from 2017. And the intention of the United Nations to set this official day was to remove what they call the invisibility cloak from the role of translators, interpreters, and terminologists as well, because they often work behind the scenes and their work often goes unnoticed to most people, but they're actually really essential figures that work to bridge between cultures and find a common ground and common understanding among different communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you could tell us a little bit about how and maybe why you got into sort of the art or the business of translation.
Yeah. So I've always been fascinated by the diversity of language and how they intersect with the cultural context that they belong to. And the classic question you asked among friends, and you ask yourselves what superpower you would like to have if you could choose one. And mine has always been to speak and understand every language in the world. But since that is impossible, or at least for now, the closest thing I could do was get into and study translation in foreign languages. And so that's why I started to get both my degrees, like my bachelor's and my master's, in English and Chinese translation. And this has not only strengthened my linguistic skills, but also allowed me to gain a deeper understanding and appreciation for cross-cultural communication.
That's so cool. So yeah, lately with the internship that I'm doing as well with Vice Press, you've been here for a bit longer than me. If you've gotten the opportunity to translate a book, actually. So could you tell us just a little bit about how did you get that opportunity and what was sort of the process?
Yeah. So I've been actually nurturing the dream of becoming a literary translation for as long as I could remember. And so after getting my master's, I knew I had to get hands-on experience in that field. And so through my university in Turin, I decided to apply for the Erasmus Plus traineeship program. And this has led me to land an amazing opportunity with this Galway-based independent publishing house, which is Stripes Press, as you well know. And I was fortunate enough to be given the opportunity to work on something that I've always dreamed of, which is translating a book, as you said. And I was assigned this book called If You Knew Me, Would You Love Me by A.J. Cosgrave. And the English version will actually come out pretty soon on October 3rd. And the Italian translation will follow on October 24th. So keep an eye out for both. And the author, A.J. Cosgrave, is actually an Irish psychologist. And she lives with dissociative identity disorder. So that's what the book is about. But the thing is that she gives a unique double perspective on being both a psychologist and a patient. So it is addressed towards both healthcare specialists, mental healthcare specialists, and people living with this disorder. And this has allowed me to gain a deeper insight into the experience of people who navigate with mental health struggles. And I already hold the fight to against mental health stigma, and so I am very proud to bring AJ Cosgrave's story to the Italian audience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think from that process of having to, now in this case it would be from English to Italian, you've translated the book, do you think especially with a story that is this personal and with a lot of technical terms, like what difficulties do you face often in translation? Is there like any specific examples you can think of what can maybe sometimes make it very difficult to get the same meaning and the same feeling into the other translation as is in the original?
Yeah, that's a very good question actually, because translation is no easy task, definitely. But many people, like from the outside perspective, they believe that translation is just a mechanical process of translating and transferring words from just one language to another. But it is actually very much more complex than that. It is a dynamic process of transforming a work that is written for specifically a cultural community and transforming it into a work that resonates with an entire different audience. And as you mentioned, translation requires a very extensive research to ensure accuracy and depth and authenticity. And in my case, I had to learn a great deal of technical terminology about mental health and psychology, psychiatry, specifically dissociative identity disorder. And I had to do this research both in English and Italian because I was looking for equivalent words and expressions that actually made sense for the Italian audience. And sometimes they're not as obvious and as immediate as people may think. And this carries very significant responsibility for the translator because in my specific case, it was directed as to healthcare specialists as well. So I had to be accurate in the process of choosing the right words in order for it to feel real and actually valid for those people. And that's why in situations like this, when it gets more tricky, it is always useful to reach out to actually specialists in the field of the book that you're translating, so that you can actually make sure that you're going on the right path and you're staying accurate. And as also you mentioned earlier, another essential aspect of translation is cross-cultural communication and adaptation. And mostly when people read books in their native language, like they don't notice, but they're filled to the brim with cultural specific items. And these can be especially challenging in translation because they have to be adapted and to the target language, and in order for the text to feel accessible and meaningful for this new audience. For instance, in one case, the author mentions a glass of 7-Up, and the Italian audience would not recognize what 7-Up is, so I had to change it to a glass of Sprite, which is not actually an Italian soft drink, but it's what people drink, and it's kind of the equivalent of a 7-Up. And so it's small details like this that can really make a big difference, and that can make the text feel more accurate and authentic. And this is just one of the most like the more relevant examples of realia, and these are like the technical term is realia, and they're culture specific items that need to be accustomed to the target audience through a process of localization. And however difficult the challenge is, I firmly believe that transferring these cultural nuances is really stimulating and thought-provoking, because as a translator, you constantly have to stop and think, how would an Italian, in my case, an Italian person think about that and refer to this specific item? Like, to be even clearer, I thought of another example I could bring to you in the audience. And basically, in one instance, the author used the expression to call trumps, which is, as you might assume, related to the field of game and card games. And it is a metaphorical expression to say that you're gaining the upper end in a challenging or tricky situation. And after giving it a lot of thought, I decided that I could translate it in Italian to calare l'asso, which literally translates to lay down the ace. And it reproduces this metaphor and this figurative atmosphere of taking control over a situation and using what you know best or what like your advantage to take control over a certain situation. And so it felt like the most natural way to make this metaphor work in Italian. And so I had to find what is called an equivalent, like it's the technical term too. And finally, for a translator, for a translation to feel both authentic and faithful to the original, the translator also needs to find a way to make the author, the soul of the author, shine through. So you have to move beyond punctuation, metrics, and rhythm. But there are also pivotal aspects to consider, but you also have to take into account the emotional intent. So in my case, If You Knew Me, Would You Love Me, which was translated to Mi ameresti se mi conoscessi davvero, it is a very emotionally charged book. So and it was a very hard read for someone who wasn't very familiar with DID and everything like that. So it was very important for me not to dilute that emotional intensity, and I had to find a way to convey the same struggles, the same pain and disappointment, but also hope that the author was feeling at the moment of writing. And so to answer your question, these are just the most evident examples and challenges that translation presents, because it is far more than a linguistic exercise. It is an act of interpretation and creative negotiation. And it requires not only linguistic and cultural awareness and precision, but also sensitivity to the author's voice and emotional intent, as I said.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people who maybe don't think about it but read translated books or even other translated works often don't realize how much goes into it and how difficult it actually can be to get one work to be as authentic as possible in another language as well.
Exactly.
So do you think compared to maybe all the studies you have done on translation, do you think this process of translating an actual book on your own with little supervision, do you think that are there any like specific skills you would say that have taught you, like that are aside from what you already knew from your education?
Yeah. So translating this book was overall an incredible experience. And so but the actual process of translation was extremely stimulating for all the reasons that I mentioned earlier. And so it was my first professional approach to translation after graduating. So it definitely was an emotional roller coaster for me, but it taught me the patience and empathy of translators and the really subtle nuances and differences between English and Italian. It really taught me and gave me like a deeper understanding on how languages work and how they are received by the source and target audience. So I really had to work on that and really had to curate like even the smallest aspects that most people won't take into account or don't think that translators take into account. So it was definitely a challenge, but this experience gave me also the chance to enhance my ability to mediate between cultures and allowed me to properly convey meaning, tone, feelings, and emotions accurately across this language. So it was definitely a very formative work that I will carry forward in my future work and career, hopefully.
Yeah, that is so cool. It sounds amazing, honestly. So
yeah, it really is.
maybe just to round us off, could you tell us, maybe just in your opinion even, why do you think it's important that we recognize and celebrate translation on Tuesday?
Yeah. So I believe that translation is extremely important because it allows us to connect across cultures and across different communities. And through translation and also interpreting, stories, ideas, and items of knowledge can reach people who might never encounter them otherwise. So translation is not just about communicating content, but it's about communicating the essence and shades of meaning, and so that readers of other languages can experience a book or a text or a literary work of some sort as fully as those that have read it in the original version. And many people think that like a translator should be in the shadows and not make themselves seen, but translators are a kind of author themselves, because we have to make countless choices that actually impact on how the final result is received by the readers. And they often work behind the scenes, translators, but their role is crucial to, as I said, bridge cultures and spark understanding among different communities. And especially in a day and age where AI and machine translation seems to be taking over very rapidly at an alarming rate, I think that it's more important than ever to preserve the human touch that only translators can bring, because at its core, translator is nothing more than an act of empathy, and because it allows us to see the world through other people's eyes, and it shows us that human experience are actually universal and that they can actually resonate across borders, and that languages are not just limits or obstacles, but are just something that sparks more conversation.
Definitely. Yeah. So I think we should all make a point to at least remember or maybe consider what translation works we've had the pleasure of on Tuesday on this day. And yeah, thank you so much for being in studio with us today, Silvia. It's been an honor, and it's been so nice to hear you
Thank
say.
you.
And yeah, best of luck in the future with your work and everything. I hope you get your dream job soon, hopefully.
Thank you so much. It was nice to be here.
Thank you.